Welcome back to Between Bells. The House Intelligence Committee is scheduled to vote today on releasing another memo to the president. The memo is the Democrats' counter to the report released last week. Joining us now are Nick Givas, media reporter at the Daily Caller, and Emma Vigeland, politics reporter at the Young Turks. Thank you both so much for being with us here today. We want to start things off with our agree to disagree with Nick. We'll start with you. Agree or disagree? As a form of transparency, President Trump needs to release the Democratic memo. Agree or disagree?
I mean, it's hard to say. If the memo has truth in it, if it's as much of a bombshell as I thought the GOP memo was, then yeah, have it come out. Let's see what's in it. But if it's just damage control for the Democrats to push back against looking bad, then I don't see why he should have to sign off on its release. I mean, it's his prerogative as commander-in-chief. But let's talk about really quickly the GOP memo for a second. You had Andrew McCabe confirming that the government couldn't have got this memo to spy on Carter Page without the dossier. You have Yates, Rosenstein, and Comey all signing off on these flimsy applications. You have the DNC and Clinton funding the Trump dossier. I mean, this stinks. So I don't see the Democrats having a memo that's even going to live up to any part of what the GOP released. And I think they're playing politics with it. But yeah, I think in the interest of getting it all out there, sure, let's see what they got. But I think it's going to be a blank.
All right, Emma, same question to you. President Trump needs to release the Democratic memo.
He's not going to. I mean, it doesn't really matter what my opinion is on this. I don't think we should even pretend that Trump is interested in transparency. That is not the person he is. He's interested in saving his own behind, and that's what he's always been about. I kind of want to address the fact that just because the Clinton campaign was involved in the Oppo research about this dossier doesn't mean that that information is discredited. I mean, when you look at the history of investigations, often the best information that you can get are from people with access to grind and with people who are biased against that source. That's how you often pile up information and lead to other sources. I'm no fan of Hillary Clinton. I'm a Bernie Sanders supporter and voted for him in the primary, so I don't really, I'm not biased towards her campaign in the least, but I don't think that discredits the information that came out of that dossier at all, or the fact that the investigation begun with or included the dossier in their research.
Yeah, and we know Devin Nunes says there's going to be more memos coming. More memos are coming, everybody. But we have been, it's basically been the biggest political headline the last week. But after all the fanfare, a lot of Democrats are saying this is essentially nothing. So, Emma, let's go to you for our next one. Agree or disagree, the Nunes memo was effectively, as Reince Priebus would say, a nothing burger.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I mean, that phrase was kind of, yes, a Reince Priebus creation. But the Carter Page was being investigated back in 2013. So the re-upping of the FISA court warrant was not based on this faulty information, but also allegedly, if we're able to believe what the Democrats say, based on information in the past. And what bothers me most about the release of this memo by the Republicans is they're capitalizing on a rightful desire by the public for more transparency in government. Our government has shrouded things in secrecy based on national security for far too long, as evidenced by the Edward Snowden leaks back a few years ago, the Pulitzer Prize winning report by Glenn Greenwald and others on those leaks. And I just think that they're kind of being disingenuous in releasing this slanted information in the name of transparency. The American people deserve transparency, more transparency from Democrats and from Republicans and from our intelligence agencies, who often use that as an excuse to get away with nefarious things instead of actually being held accountable by the public.
And Nick, I know you said just a few moments ago that you thought this was a bombshell, so I'm assuming you would disagree with that notion.
I would, and I think that Democrats know that. Why else would they have fought so hard to keep it hidden? I mean, they went to court to try to hide the details of what went on here. I mean, this is a huge bombshell. This has people at the highest levels conspiring with the political bias against Donald Trump. They're spying on an American citizen in Carter Page with nothing but this dossier. That's what we've been told so far. They used the dossier to get a FISA warrant. If they can do that to Carter Page, they can do that to any one of us. They can go after an American citizen with just a flimsy political excuse and tap their phones, use electronic surveillance, and follow them. I mean, this goes all the way to the top. This is Americans should be shocked by this. And I think the Democrats, to obsess about election interference, but then ignore the fact that they spied on the Trump campaign during the presidential election, I think it's ironic. And I think it'd be funny if it didn't set such a dangerous precedent. So, yes, I think charges should be filed. People should go to jail. And this should all come out. We need to know more about this. We need to know every last detail because this can't go on, not in America.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of comments on our Facebook. Of course, if you have comments for our guests or for us, of course, put them in the Facebook comments right below. Travis writes to us, as a Republican, I would actually like to see the McCabe transcript. That actually would be interesting. I'd like to see that as well. Emma, go ahead. You had another point you wanted to add.
Well, I mean, the Republicans just overwhelmingly voted to allow Trump to have indiscriminate spying powers over regular Americans. So it's a bit disingenuous to argue that now.
They did not know about the memo when they voted on that, though, and the members of the House hid that information, didn't release the memo before they voted on that. If this had come out, that bill would have failed. It would have gone down.
So they only care about their own? They don't care about the indiscriminate spying of Americans?
You can bet your bottom dollar they're going to go back and they're going to revisit the FISA laws, and if they don't, they're going to be making a huge mistake.
I will take that bet.
You're on. I'll bet you lunch.
All right.
All right. I love a good lunch bet. Those are my favorite bets, Nick. Thank you. All
Absolutely.
Right. Let's go to the next one.
Yes, next one here. The federal budget is set to expire this week. Man, it seems like we talk about this more than
We're all
Joel
broken records now.
Oh, right, exactly. Democrats have said that a deal is contingent on passing immigration reform. So far, no progress has been made since the last budget negotiations a month ago. Now, it's always possible that Congress passes another short-term budget deal. Nick, we'll go to you on this one first. Agree or disagree? We will have another government shutdown this week.
I'm going to disagree. It's hard to tell. It could happen, but I'm going to disagree only because I think the Democrats don't want to look as bad as they did when they shut the government down the first time. And if there's one thing Congress loves more than themselves and the sound of their own voice, it's a good continuing resolution. So I think they're going to continue to kick the can, keep the government open. Neither party wants the bad press, but that doesn't mean the issue is going to be solved. So hard to tell, but I don't think it's going to shut down again in the near future.
Okay, that's a disagree from Nick. Emma.
Well, I guess they can vote on the continuing resolution to fund it through March 22nd, which I believe that they're going to do, especially because the Democrats have shown that they have zero spine when it comes to protecting the dreamers in the country. They want a clean, the base, and some Democrats want a clean DACA bill, which it doesn't seem like they're going to get past that 60-vote threshold in the Senate to get. So I think that they will cave again, vote on the continuing resolution, fund the government for a little bit more, kick that can down the road that Paul Ryan loves to do so frequently, and then maybe address the dreamers who are getting closer and closer to deportation, despite the fact that they are American citizens who grew up in this country and know nothing else but this country.
Yeah, and to Nick's point earlier, Democrats did, especially Chuck Schumer, get eviscerated by poll numbers after the most recent shutdown. So let's go to our next one, and Emma, we'll start with you on this one. DACA, it's not going to be solved in the budget talks at all this week.
No, it's not going to be, unfortunately. And that's because I think that the Democrats have terrible leadership in both the House and the Senate. Leadership that caves whenever the government's going to shut down. They're so afraid because their donors don't want the stock market, to plummet, which is what happens when there's a government shutdown, and oh God, maybe their stocks will fall, and then you're not getting that campaign cash, Chuck Schumer. So that's what bothers me a lot about this, is that even though polls range from 70% of Americans to 80% of Americans support keeping dreamers in the United States, the Democrats can't even fight for something that has that high of popularity because they are feckless, they are beholden to their donors, less so than the Republicans, but that's the problem with our campaign finance system in the country.
And Nick, let's go to you on this particular one. We know John McCain and Chris Coons in the Senate are trying to work out a particular bipartisan bill, but it doesn't have any funding for President Trump's border wall whatsoever. President Trump's almost like taunting in many ways on Twitter, saying, Democrats clearly don't want this as bad as they say they do. So do we think DACA at least gets solved this week, or no?
No, I don't think so. I think if it was going to get solved, it would have been solved earlier. I mean, President Trump did put forth a plan that would have legalized, I believe it was 1.8 million dreamers and illegal immigrants. And the Democrats balked at it. They didn't want a border wall. And I think they're afraid that if they give him what he wants, if they even vote on any piece of legislation that puts the wall up, they'll see that as a PR failure. And it won't help them in the next election. They'll just look complicit in Trump's agenda. So to their own detriment, I think they're going to continue to shoot themselves in the foot. And I think Trump is going to continue to play hardball. And it's going to be, I think, not this week. We're definitely not going to see DACA get resolved this week. And it's going to continue on.
All right, we'll continue to track any movement there. One more topic that we want to squeeze in here while we got some time.
This is the hot take
one. Trump will fire Rod Rosenstein before the end of February. Nick, let's stay with you for a second here. Agree or disagree? That will take place.
I'm not going to play prognosticator on this one, but I am going to say he certainly should. Rod Rosenstein signed off, like I said, on one of those FISA applications with minimal evidence using the dossier as proof. And he's left over guard. Let's get some new blood in there. Let's get someone that's more in line with President Trump. And I mean, look at this special investigation into Russia. It's a disaster, even from the left. It's convoluted. It's messy. We've had political bias throughout. He's failed. He's failed at his job. And I think that, especially in the Trump administration, you usually only get one try. And I think he's gotten more than that. And when the press interviewed him, Trump said, "You figure it out," when they asked him if he was going to fire him. So I think his days are numbered in the Justice Department.
Okay, and I want to get your response to this too as well, Emma. The response from Nick around needs to get somebody more like President Trump in there as well. All right, so first the question, will Trump fire Rod Rosenstein by the end of the month?
I mean, I think it's a pretty bold claim to put someone who's more in line with the person that they're investigating as the head of the investigation. But, it's an amusing claim by the right now that the intelligence community is just too liberal and they are out to get President Trump. They are historically the most conservative institution in the country, going back to J. Edgar Hoover and continuing through the Iraq War, etc. They are not out to get him. The fact of the matter is that President Trump is not a very intelligent man and has a lot of sloppy deals with the Russians and overseas because he couldn't get loans in the United States. It's all going back to the money and the hundreds of millions of dollars that he has in Deutsche Bank and potentially with Russian oligarchs. So the idea that Rod Rosenstein, who is a Republican, is actively going after President Trump, it's just absurd on its face. And I just can't understand the validity of that argument.
But do you think he'll get fired?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. Again, I feel like that's speculating. But if Trump's in-house counsel has their wits about him and they're able to do what they did back in the summer where they encouraged him not to fire Robert Mueller, then that won't happen. But again, he surrounds himself with sycophants, so it's really hard to say if they will stand up to him and make sure that he doesn't do this.
All right, we will have to leave things there for today, but amazing talking with you both,
Very
as
good talk
always.
today.
It's Nick Givas.
Hot takes around.
Yes,
Love
there
it.
we go.
Smoking hot.
Dropping it. All right, Nick
pleasure.
Givas, definitely. Media reporter at the Daily Caller, and Emma Vigeland, politics producer, at the Young Turks. Thank you both for joining us so much.